Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Olumide Idowu. We are here again for another edition this month, Climate Wednesday. And this month, we are going to be focusing on climate justice. And we see that as we are moving closer to COP26, we've been able to understand that a lot of conversation have started, and we see that they say half of some countries have submitted their NDCs, and for us to now have a robust conversation on how we are clamoring for climate action or climate change, climate justice is something that is now a very big conversation. That is why this month on Climate Wednesday, we are focusing on climate justice, and we're going to be discussing on leaving no one behind, how to achieve climate justice, and as a whole. And today, we have a very great, passionate young person from across Africa. He's from Zimbabwe, and he's going to be sharing with us the topic we're going to be talking about today: how to achieve climate justice, because that is the only tool, that is the only way we can actually tell ourselves what we are doing and how we can get to where we are. And to begin with, the idea that the adverse impact of a warming climate are not felt equitably among men. But what we're actually looking for is climate justice now. So we also know that environmental justice, climate change, and air is also a social issue, and it has been getting people upset because they are not getting what they actually are voting for. They are demanding for climate justice everywhere. But not all climate impacts are created equally or distributed equally. We know that every country, every nation, all have the way they are getting the impact and the effect of climate change. From extreme weather to rising sea level, the effect of climate change often have a lot of disappropriate effects on historical marginalized or underserved community. So that is why we say, let us focus on climate justice and see how people want to demand for justice towards the environment they want to see, and to see how we can create a movement and that can acknowledge climate change and can have a and different social, economic, public health, and other adverse impact on the privileged population. So today we are bringing on board our great brother from Zimbabwe. His name is Jean-Bertrand, and he's going to be talking to us on the issue of climate justice. And let me also say thank you to our supporting partner, United Nations Development Program in Nigeria. We have Sustainable Development Network, that's CSDEFNet. We have PAGJA, and we have African Youth Initiative on Climate Change for partnering with us to make this happen as we move forward to talk about climate justice this month, and to see how we can call on our leaders and our people that are responsible for climate action conversation. So I'll bring our guest on board today to speak with us and to share his experience and some ideas on what has been going on when it comes to climate justice. Yeah, thank you very much. Welcome, Mr. Jen. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, Olumide. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for giving us your time to speak to us today on the issue of climate justice and climate change related issues as well. So, to start with, can you please tell us about yourself, what you do, what actually inspired you to do what you are doing in this line of climate change and sustainable growth and sustainable development? Thank you.
Okay. So my name is Jean-Bertrand Mhandu. From Zimbabwe. I'm a young guy, young man, from Zimbabwe, working with other young people in developmental issues nationally. So I have a bias towards environment and climate change, and currently the national coordinator for African Youth Initiative on Climate Change Zimbabwe, as well as Earth Day Regional Director for Africa. So what inspired me was the rocky background that we have in Africa. We have a community that is supposed to contribute something for us to be able to sustain, provide for our communities. And that alone just told me that I have to play an impact within my community in doing something that is meaningful and could benefit my peers, my community, my grandparents, my parents, my siblings, and the entire community in general. So, out of noticing the surroundings, seeing the trees being chopped, the wetlands being degraded, all the natural resources resources being depreciated by just a few for their own good and own benefit, it was worrisome to me. And the little efforts that I was doing, with just like planting trees when seemed not to be enough. Therefore, meeting up with like-minded young people like you, Olumide, my colleagues, my peers, the guys that I work with in Zimbabwe, we came up with these initiatives whereby if we do something together, maybe we'll be able to, to influence and make a bigger impact. Hence where we are today.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think you've been doing a lot. I can testify to that with the African Youth Initiative on Climate chapter in Zimbabwe. And I can also see the effort you guys are putting into making sure that the voice of young people and voice of other related stakeholders take effect in your country. So I quickly want to ask you, when you hear climate justice, what comes to your mind? How can you describe the word climate justice?
Climate justice, I look at, climate change itself, the climate being and our environment, a social issue, our home, because it provides our weather, it summarizes where we live. It's something that is important to each and every one globally because we rely on it for anything that we have, it being part of the environment. So when it comes with the implications that we are facing these days because of the changing climate, we have some worrying things that needs our urgent action. For instance, we are facing several heat, changes, weather patterns, so many implication, negative impacts on our day-to-day lives. So with all these adverse, implications and negative impacts, there are so many people that are affected even worse. For instance, here in Africa, we are hardly hit by climate change. It's not equally affecting people, and there is a factor whereby we have natural resources globally that has been exploited to the day that we are today. Most of it has been caused by the human actions, producing so much fossil fuels. But how then can we make sure that we revive, or we do not? Of course, we need to dwell in the past and see where we went wrong, but how do we recover, given that the people are suffering now? That's where we talk of the rights of the people, those people that are suffering. We talk of, the politics surrounding it. Hence, the ethnicity, and then now we're looking at how best can we bring in the justice to the people, make sure that everybody is catered for as we try to adapt to the prevailing climate change conditions and impacts, all these food shortages, all these disease outbreaks, all these disasters, the hurricanes, the cyclones. How are we going to cater for our people, all these people that are facing migrations, the immigrants, language barriers, all these things that are affecting our communities? So how best can we ensure that everybody is catered for as we try to recover, and as we try to also hold other people accountable for doing wrong, so that they are brought to justice and know what they're doing is not right?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that's a very good definition and of what climate justice is all about. Because if we want to actually see the kind of impact or the kind of contribution that some big companies or people that are making our environment not sustainable, we know that if we don't speak out, then we will continue to see those effects on, most especially on the livelihood. And I think that's one of the biggest conversation that I think a lot of us need to start engaging ourselves to make sure that we bring those polluters or big polluters into book, because we cannot continue to have such people in the space and we are still talking about sustainable development goals. Thank you very much. So my second question here is why does climate justice actually matters to us? Do you think we are demanding enough, or do you think we are not demanding the way we're supposed to demand, or we are just saying this and nobody's listening to us? So why does it really matters?
Um, Climate justice is very, very imperative. It's a critical component in this day age in life. It's a no-brainer, but the wrong has to be brought up to the book. I'll give you an example. Right now, we have cyclones, Cyclone Idai in Zimbabwe. We lost several people to this disaster. We have so many disasters happening globally. And the ability, or us being ignorant and not holding, you know, or not reacting to these such disasters, it means that we are neglecting and we are getting to the individualistic type of lifestyle. So, given that climate change is an issue that affects economic growth, it affects development of society. Right now, we have issues such as sustainable development goals that needs to be taken care of, issues of health, issues of education, issues of production, issues of consumption. All those patterns, they need to be changed, and they are affected by our communities. They are affected deeply. They are affected deeply, by such activities. So we need to make sure that we hold or we bring about, for instance, we have developed countries and high polluters that are making money and have made us feel like, you know, exploitation is the best way of life. Dollars, they have more value than anything else, whereas well-being of the planet is the most critical component because it's our home. And we also have our health, we have the well-being of people, we have wildlife, which makes up our ecosystem and makes us, our communities, keep on surviving. So if we don't pay attention to such things, for instance, we had the Amazon forest that were there. They burnt a couple of weeks. We are having several fires that we are experiencing now, and that's an entire ecosystem that has been damaged and produces about 20% of the oxygen that we have. And you will see that if not those such things are not taken care of and are not put beyond reach, our communities will hence suffer the most. So there is a need for us to look at the people who are making wrong decisions and people who are doing activities that are contributing and affecting our climate in terms of science that are leading to such problems. So it is quite important for us. And in terms of action, I think we are not yet sound enough because we are still living in the spheres of the politics, the prevailing politics, the United Nations, the
Hello,
way they
Mr.
do
Jan.
their
I
negotiation.
think your network is bad, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
was I dropping?
Yes, 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 yes. It was breaking, but don't worry. I think you will when I continue the next question, you'll be able to add to that conversation. So, quick one before we move to the next question. We're talking about leaving no one behind. Is a question and is a conversation that has been in the space since we started the Sustainable Development, the SDGs. In this context of climate justice, do you think someone should be left behind, or do you think everybody must be part of the conversation and part of the solution and implementation of this space?
Personally, as being coming from an African background, we know the strength that it's there as a community. Everybody has a role to play in a society and a community. We have different skills and different capacities, but we need to harness them for us to develop or to produce whatever we want to produce at our maximum capacity. So, of course, the concept of not leaving anyone behind has a positive bearing on our, responses to the climate action and in the component of climate justice because you can't decide for the majority, whereas they can also make a voice for them. So it's just like a component of civic education. For you to tell people that throwing litter down is bad, they can listen and then they can say we know it because you told them. But for them to act knowingly, it means they have to accept it and they have to to suggest that this is really, really bad for our community, and they have to understand why they are doing it. So that's the element of bringing everybody behind, bringing everyone on board, and making sure that we don't leave anyone behind, so that everybody can bring something to the table. They understand the position that they are in. They act in response to, assisting one another, as well as making sure that whatever they are doing, it doesn't have any implications on their society, on themselves, as well as take up the responsibility. Because the other thing is, people don't want to take up the responsibility. For instance, people don't want to plant trees because they think Olumide and the climate people that are supposed to do that, yet it's also their responsibility. So once you engage and you don't leave anyone behind, it means there will be integration amongst the civil societies, local councillors, politicians, economists, and all developmental plans who would have climate action, and even the NDCs that are currently being developed, they would have a critical or mainstream climate action as an ambition, or as a targeted goal, given the agency that it comes with.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I was able to grab some key points, and I think maybe your network is, I don't know whether it's mine or yours. I'm sure it's your network because it's breaking a little bit. So thank you very much. Moving forward, this is the main conversation now. So, what do you think is the role of African youth in climate justice? What kind of actions, what kind of activities, what kind of move, or let me say collaboration or partnership, do you think we need to do to make sure that young people have their own space when it comes to the climate justice conversation?
The role of young people now is really, really big and complex and something new. Given that we are with the largest demography so far, we have to make sure that we engage as many people as we can. We only have the masses to do so. So we have to do lots of awareness raising, climate education, bring about, the climate literacy component, where you also make sure that climate education is mainstream and becomes part of our day-to-day life. And we also have to bring about, stakeholders, like capacitate them in terms of capacity building. For instance, you would have local governments that are still running with, some developmental plans from back then, some statutory instruments from back then, but then the time and the challenges that we're facing needs us to adjust. So we need to capacitate them, bring about our skills, our knowledge, our research into such components. We also have to mobilize resources. We have to mobilize money, financial resources. We have to mobilize natural resources, human resources as well. For instance, get together a group of young people to produce. It could be electricity, it could be waste management, amongst many other things. Those are some of the critical things that we need to do. And then we have to hold accountable the policymakers. Um, Make sure we bring them to book, ask them, critique, look through, see through, produce some policy briefs, research, do some consultations on their behalf, make sure nobody's left behind, and then bring in some recommendations to whatever policies that we have that they have also produced. Question and also look for support from probably international platforms, from platforms like AYIC, which has big engagement at regional level, at international level. Those are the partners that can help you, get to book with your government, because they listen when they hear another roaring voice of young people that are there. So it's not just about creating another platform or whatever, but it's also joining the current existing movement, adding on your capacity to it. And also we need to come up with innovations and, ideas on how to replace. For instance, we have bad ways of operation. We have businesses that have been operating in the country that help our communities, or help our, you know, economies to run, for instance, with fossil fuels, with other, emitting industries. we need to replace them, but our innovations can only intervene. We need to be able to grow our science and be able to calculate our GHG emissions so that whenever we are speaking, we are speaking from a informed perspective. We're speaking facts and things that we know that we are talking about, not just, and we are also supposed to work extra hard, unlike before. Now we are supposed to engage in day to day, like developmental issues. Make sure that we have enough knowledge. We make it our responsibility to know what's transpiring in health sector, in agriculture, food production, in climate crisis, in whatever the SDGs that we have, all the 17 SDGs that we have, and also promote synergies. These things are quite important, as well as raise our voices, like straight up raise our voices and tell a spade as a spade. If someone is polluting, we are not supporting that. We do not have to compromise for something that has a bearing on our future and the future of our families. So we have to start, building up and getting the masses that we need and do the job that needs to be done.
Thank you very much. Get a network, existing network to join, get yourself involved, and make sure that you have something you want to contribute to push that action. I think those words are very, very good for everybody watching us. If you are watching us now from anywhere across Africa, across the world, this is another edition of Climate Wednesday. And here today we are with Jam Bertrand from Zimbabwe. He is the national coordinator for African Youth Initiative on Climate Change in Zimbabwe, and is also the regional coordinator for Earth Day Africa. And we have been engaging him for the past 20, 25 minutes on the issue of climate justice. And he has been sharing with us how to actually achieve climate justice, how we can engage more young people, and how we can also see ourselves as an actor in the space of climate change and climate justice. So let me move to the next one, and this one is going to be a sort of, what do you think are the things that are hindering young people or hindering or making them not to actually push for more climate justice, to take action? What do you think are those things, that those challenges for young people, because they are the one that is more closer to the community, they are the one that is trying to take action. So what do you think is the challenge? What do you think they can start doing to make sure that they overcome these challenges? Thank you.
Yeah, we have so many hindrances. Opportunities, they are also a factor. The way we are brought up, the type of education that we grew up receiving is a big, big factor. The communities that we come from, how they are programmed as people, they are shaped with what surrounds them. So for a young person from Norway to just say climate change, given that it's a big giant that's just has fallen upon us, and we are recently recognizing the agency that it's presenting, how are the young people going to adopt and eventually shift from a business mind to also a community or a develop like uh, you know preventive or responsive lifestyle, whereby they have to be also selfless and not be greedy for the benefit of the ecosystems, for the benefit of, yet they were brought up going for white collar jobs. So all that type of education has a very, very big bearing on ourselves. So young people now, they have to work extra hard, like I emphasized. Lots of researches has to be taken into consideration. We have to do lots of research, pay attention to all the negotiations. It could be multilateral agreements that are going on and other plans that are being developed at international level.
I
And we
do.
also have to pay attention to the fact that young people are facing financial uh, limitations. We do not have enough finances to help us. We having limited resources for young people to participate. For instance, if you want to do some project that would take so much, so for you to leave whatever that you're doing for those resources to do something that is not beneficial, it also is a hindrance. We also have to add the fact that um, the value of this climate action that we're doing is limited. It's I don't know how we can monetize it so that it has some value, so that the well-being of a planet also can be seen as success at whatever platforms that we have. That's another action that we can take. And we also have a small space whereby you will notice. I would give you an example. Right now, we are about to head for conference of parties in Glasgow, right? For young people to be part of that circle of the negotiators, the group of negotiators, to be part of those groups of scientists. The process is not so open out there for young people to be involved in such issues. That's a barrier on its own. So you have to make sure that you beg other people, or you have to be networked enough to be part of such circles. So the fact that the circles are limited is quite also a negative impact and a hindrance to young people. So yeah, for now, to break the value chain, it takes just a few that are in spaces like us and the other young leaders that are out there to also incorporate and take the information down there, make sure that we bring about other young people on board, and so that they can also participate and see the opportunities, and also challenge our governments, our developmental partners, so that they create these opportunities. UNDP usually works with governments, and they have that structured. That system alone is not beneficial to young people that are trying to do their startup projects and startup initiatives. So all those things, they are quite hinders, and it's about time we started on knocking on our resident coordinators, on country coordinators at UN offices, and we have a frank conversation with them. Otherwise, they are not as useful as we think they are, but they are just taking us for a charity case that needs a handout and needs to be told what they want, but not them coming from a community perspective.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You mentioned finance. You mentioned the access to some international partners for young people. You also mentioned the UNDP role. I think those comments, they are very, very important, because it's actually making young people not to get that direct access. And one thing is, finance is very, very key. But I think also that young people, we need to start strategizing ourselves, locate ourselves in that position whereby we'll be able to get access to those things. And it's also a good call to action that this is a challenge for young people to actually drive financing for their projects and activities. And I can say that that is very, very true. And also the way the UNDP work with the young people, or work with government they can't work directly with young people except they have the partnership with the government. And I think it's very, very important we start looking at that side of this conversation, because for us to demand for climate justice, we need to also make sure that we are part of the space, we understand the space, and the government will be able to take us serious when we are sharing what we are doing concerning climate justice. So we are rounding up. If you are still on this call, you can send your comment, your message, your email, your questions to us, so that we can relay this to our speaker today. Once again, our speaker today is Jean-Bertrand. He's from Zimbabwe, the national focal point for African Youth Initiative on Climate Change, and is also the regional coordinator for Earth Day Africa. So we are very happy to have you today, and this conversation has been so wonderful on climate justice and how to achieve climate justice in Africa and across the globe. So let me end this call by asking you these two key questions. What do you think should be the role, most especially the government, because they are the one that are actually taking decision, and this decision influence what the country should look like when it comes to action. So, what do you think should be the role of government in making sure that this climate justice, that there's justice in our climate, there's environmental justice, and there's a right to livelihood and right to opportunity for both young people, CSOs, people with living with disability, and other stakeholders that actually are demanding for climate justice? What do you think should be their role? Thank you.
I think the government should facilitate engagement. By this, I mean they should, you know, acknowledge that, especially from Africa, all our actions should be community driven because we intend to want to produce for those communities. So, if we're talking of food production, for instance, or resilience in agriculture, we need to get the governments, making sure that resources are available and making sure that communities they are responding scientifically um, to produce whatever they want to produce. Um, so all those efforts they are needed, and we also need the government to consult and engage as many young people as they can. Like we say, there's strength in numbers, right? And those numbers they have to be harnessed. The human resource is the most critical resource that this continent has, so they have to invest and get some resources and also get this human resource from young people. Make sure they are the soldiers that will do the projects for them, the soldiers that will provide and produce for them, and also listen, especially when you talk of climate justice. They have to fight for their people. Given that Africa, we are most affected by climate change, I do not see why, as the African continent, we are still not getting enough resources, to develop infrastructure, to produce for our communities. They should have a bold voice when they do these negotiations. They should have a backing voice and allow to say something with one concrete voice. Tell these people to stop. We are not getting enough development from these heavy polluters as Africa. Nothing that we're not getting any, but just distraction. If you speak from community point of view, so it's high time maybe we stop giving this some of these politicians, the security that they've provided for themselves by creating, these ways of negotiations, these ways of communications. I don't know, the diplomacy that they call the diplomacy right away, and start, getting people to act, because what's right is right in front of us. We all know what needs to be done. So the governments should stand up for their people. We used to have a concept of populism where you have your leader to speak for their people, not to speak, for the diplomacy or for development, but speak for the people, what they're requesting and what they want. And yeah, they also have to invest back and risk some resources, given that we have lots of researches that needs to be done in the continent. Our universities, they need those resources. Young people need those resources. They should risk some resources for us to experiment. Not that we have the ideas, but the ideas will come from the wild imaginations that we'll come up with when we are experimenting. So we need all those things to be shared with us for us to be able to do whatever we can do.
Thank you very much. The government should create engagement, give a platform for engagement. It's very, very great. So thank you so much, Jan. Thank you for that comment today. Thank you for those contributions. I think starting this conversation this month, climate justice, you've been able to help us to expand or explain the role of climate justice and how we can make sure that we should leave no one behind, and how to achieve it is something that you've also mentioned here today. Like I said, if you are still talking to us, you can watch this program again and again on our YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And you can also send your question to us. We'll be able to, reply and relate it to our guest for today. So to close this conversation today, as we promised, it's not going to be long. I would like to ask our speaker, our guest, what is that message do you want to send to the world leaders or to the African leaders concerning the concerning climate justice? What is that one sentence you want to send out?
We need you now than ever, and trust in us. Make use of us. It's important to stand by us, and we will never disappoint the continent. We are the hope, we are the future. So, all the leaders, pay attention to all the signs. Um, Selfishness has reached its mark. It's no longer, you know, the order of the day. There is more to human or to humanity or to this life than just being, be known as a great leaders are known with the number of leaders that they will produce. So as we head for all this, let's be bold and not pay attention to the other issues. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, John. Thank you. Your comment was trust in us. We will get this done and we'll make sure that we continue to amplify the voice of other grassroots young people across continent. Thank you for your time today, and we wish to have you some other time. And thank you for coming. Have a great evening. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. It's so nice to have you on. Jan has actually discussed with us today on climate justice. And as we continue this month, we're going to be looking at different aspects of climate justice. And as you also know that climate justice begins with recognizing key groups and differently affected by climate change. And we're also going to be looking at climate impact that we know that it also affect inequitable social conditions, affect women, affect children, it affect every other. But that's why we talk today about leaving no one behind. We need to create a momentum that will help us to build a climate justice solution. And those are the key things that we are going to be looking at, and we've already started discussing in our edition for this month. So see you next week on another edition of Climate Wednesday. Have a great evening. Bye.